Hey, Street Talk and other stuff. Mike, Mad Dog Magnati, thanks for tuning in last Monday in March. I was telling a friend of mine yesterday, this is just about my favorite time of year. I mean, weather's still a little chilly, but I actually put away my snow shovel and the snow melts. I unplugged my heat tape, and now I just got to get my snow tires taken off. Spring and summer is 100% ahead of us, so this is great. So, hey. Thanks for being here, but I got a good show today. One of my best friends is here. He's got a very interesting story, but I got a story for you. You know, I do marital counseling. I still talk to couples, and every couple who comes into my office says the same thing. Have trouble with communication. Okay, so this guy comes in my office, and he says to me, I need to help me communicating with my wife. I said, okay, what's up? He said, I haven't said anything to my wife in 2 years. I said, well, why not? He says, well, I don't want to interrupt her. And that one's going to get me in trouble, I know.
I'm going to move my chair away.
Okay, like I said, I got a really cool guest today. Very interesting story, but Street Talk and other stuff, you stick around. We will be right back. So.
Are you hungry enough to eat the end out of a rhinoceros? I know how you feel. Come on out to Blueberry Hills. You'll have a great time. We've got excellent food, a feet on the furniture kind of experience, and we won't hustle you out of your table. If you want a real farm experience, make the trek to Manson to Blueberry Hills, where you sit, you pick, you eat, and you visit. So come on out and see what all the fuss is about. Blueberry Hills in Manson. It's where the world is coming to.
The new Hummer EV is everything you want in an all-electric vehicle. It's powerful, reliable, comfortable, and will take you anywhere you want to go, on-road or off. Why buy one of those lesser EVs when you can have one that uses them for traction? Order your Hummer pickup or SUV today from Sangster Motors, batteries included.
Hey, welcome back to Save Mart. What can we help you find today?
We're looking for a mattress.
Oh, right this way. We got a large selection. We have this pillow top here.
Oh, comfortable.
We have more to choose from down here.
Oh.
I think I have the perfect one over here for you.
I guess we'll take this one.
You'll find it at Save Mart. Full service at a low, low price.
Attention, attention. It's Collins Fashion's big buy one, get one free sale. That's right. Buy one red check or tag item for half price and receive the next item free. Amazing selection of vests, jackets, sweaters, tops, boots, scarves, etc., etc. And we are receiving wonderful spring merchandise arriving daily. Capris, colorful tops, dresses, special occasion fashions for your upcoming events. We have foundation, shoes, and jewelry, personal service and stylists and savings, all at Collins in downtown Wenatchee.
Okay, we are back, Street Talk and other stuff, and I am very happy to introduce to you someone you already know, but Mr. Don Myers. Don.
Nice to be
Good
here,
see
as
you.
always.
Good, it's great. It's good. Now, I love this guy. A wonderful human being, and I would, and sometimes might try to emulate him because he's such a nice guy, but I know I would never measure up.
Well, I'm way taller than you.
Well, that's true.
Touche.
But Don's been around a while, but if you happen to have been living under a rock for a while and don't know the man, Don, tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about me. Grew up in Seattle, but sort of moved to Eastern Washington, went to college in Walla Walla, became a teacher in Yakima, moved to Wenatchee in 1985.
Okay, and you met your sweet wife Heidi in Walla Walla.
I always say I fell in love with Eastern Washington, and I fell in love with an Eastern Washington girl, so it worked out very well.
I hear you.
Moved here in 1985 to become the area director for Young Life, and we've been here ever since. So almost 40 years and 3 kids, and they're all here as teachers, and 6 grandkids here, and so it's a good life.
You have got a cool family.
Oh gosh, we do.
You know, you really do. You really do.
We're
And
blessed.
you are very blessed.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
You know, I remember the first time we met, you were doing an ethics seminar
Oh gosh.
for Young Life, you know, and I think I told you the difference between an informant and a snitch.
I remember that clearly. Absolutely. It was at the Red Lion.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You objected that I used the word snitch.
Right.
So
Well, you used it improperly.
Thank you.
And actually, it wasn't that big of a deal, but I just wanted to make my presence known.
why are we not surprised? No
Well,
one is surprised at that
by
comment.
that, you know? So
Yes.
no, I mean, one time our pastor, Tim Wilbur, once mentioned me in church in a semi-derogatory but humorous way, and he said to me later, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't. I said, Don, I said, Tim, any attention is good attention.
Shine that spotlight.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have had a very interesting experience, okay? The popularity of this DNA checking in 23andMe and Ancestry.com, I think many of you know that in this process, I found out I had a half-sister, love child from World War II. From my dad.
It's a great story in itself.
It is. And then some time ago, I had a mutual friend, Vicki Reed.
Yep.
Vicki found out that her father was not her biological father, and she found out that the man who is her biological father used to sell his sperm to a sperm bank in California. And she has found like 18 siblings that this guy had. And this guy,
She's got a clan.
yeah, this guy is saying, yeah, this is really cool. I got all these kids. But you have had so why don't you start at the beginning?
Okay.
Start at the beginning. So
In 2017, I have one sister that's 4 years older than I am, and in 2017, Barb and I decided, really on kind of a lark, to do a DNA test, and so we did.
well, I was saying to Rosie today, I said, you know, Don, everyone's doing something he wants to do too. So.
It was actually more my sister's idea,
Okay, all right.
and you know, and it's cheap and it's
Yeah.
accessible and it's just no big deal.
Right.
So we literally did the spit in the tube and mail it off.
Sure. And which service did you use?
Ancestry.com.
That's what we use too,
So, my sister is in the Seattle area, as well as my mother, who was alive at that point. And so a number of weeks later, because it doesn't take a long time, but a number of weeks later, Barb called me and said, had a funny conversation with Mom. Mom's usually very stable and calm, and she said that she just sort of kind of went off and said, this is a dumb idea. It's the stupidest thing you've ever done.
The dumb idea to have your
to
DNA
do a,
test.
do a
Yeah.
DNA test. And Barb was sort of perplexed.
We
Okay,
know
it's
where this is going.
foreshadowing here. And so then, a few weeks after that, Barb called me and literally used the line, I think you should sit down. So it's not just in TV and movies.
Okay, so but you didn't know what she was calling about.
No
right?
idea.
Oh,
Absolutely
gosh.
no idea. Mom had called Barb and said, I'm having a crisis. You need to come and talk to me. And Barb went over to her apartment and
And
said...
this is what Barb was telling you need to sit down for.
Exactly.
Okay.
She's now relaying this conversation to me and said, Mom said, I never wanted to tell you this. You have forced my hand, and now I have to tell you. And at this is 2017. I mean, I'm 60 and Barb is 64 or something like that. And Mom says, you were both conceived by artificial insemination.
So what was your emotional reaction when you heard that?
I was
Were you sitting down?
I was glad I was sitting down. It was, I mean, wow. I mean, what do you make of that?
Yeah.
So there's a sense of one of the most primal things in your life. Your parents. At this
Exactly,
point, my father.
yeah.
At this point, my father is not my father. Mom obviously was my mother. We just didn't know. It threw into question. Okay, what happened from there? Right. The other thing that was difficult was that Mom kind of landed this on us, but didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm not going to tell you anything more. Okay. And so very, very private, which was, at that point, she was 90 plus, and so it's very common in that kind of, that generation.
Well, and that
it's
time
secretive.
it was quiet. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think now growing up in high school, we had an associate pastor at my church that had 2 adopted kids.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were more than that, but people didn't talk about it.
Very
you know?
secretive.
Yeah.
So we began to talk with Mom and try try and find out a little bit more, and didn't really find out more. We did find out that, yes, she knew when she and Dad got married in 1950 that Dad probably, her words, probably couldn't have kids. So then they wanted to have children, and so they found a doctor and who helped them, and so 2 kids later, here we are. But it was supposed to be a secret.
Okay.
They,
So this was something, part of their courtship and everything, they were kind of thinking about. And
here's one of the bizarre things, and this truly still amazes me. Mom was adamant and said many times, and I certainly believed her, she said, we never talked about it. Your dad and I never talked about this the whole time. So it was you know, bury it. It was this is not going to be part of the conversation. It's certainly not going to be anything that they're gonna tell us about, you know, later. You know, gosh, we should tell the kids when they're adults or something like that. So forward just a few months, early 2018, bless her heart, Heidi, my wife, was the inquisitive one. I've never been the inquisitive one. I'm kind of the bobblehead doll that just goes, okay.
You were kind of like, oh, well, my dad's not my dad, he's some guy.
You know, and Heidi said, don't you want to know? And I said, what's the point? What will I gain by finding out who my biological father is at this point? Barb was interested, I think, but you know, it was Heidi that was really the searcher. Yeah. And so Barb and I both said, if you want to dig, go ahead. And so I think Heidi closed her door at the office and said, hold my calls. And based on a premise, and there's so much more to this, based on a premise, who could the doctor, who could the sperm donor have been? Right. Because at this point we had received our DNA test back, and Barb and I were obviously full siblings. Right. Okay.
So whoever was the sperm donor for Barb
both of us
was the sperm donor for you 4 years later.
Which is interesting. Had Mom never caved, we never would have figured this out. Yeah. Because our reports would not have shed any light on this at all. Right. So yes, we have the same mother and the same father. Who could that be 4 years apart? The guess is it's going to be the doctor. Yeah. And so Heidi begins to use Ancestry.com and all the information, the data that comes, and comparing. And we knew the doctor's name. I've always known the doctor's name because Mom revered him.
Okay, so he was like your mom's doctor, and you knew who he was before all this came out.
He was,
right?
and she would call him, and I'll tell you his name. She would call him not just Dr. Rice, but she would say Dr. Glenn Rice. Okay. It was almost like a honorific.
Sure.
Doctor,
sure.
And she thought the world of him. And so Heidi, I remember one trip back from Seattle, kind of going over Stevens, Heidi keeps pulling out her phone and showing me pictures. Here's Dr. Rice. Do you think you look like him?
Dr. Glenn Rice.
Dr. Glenn Rice. Okay. And I'm trying to drive over Stevens Pass going, I can't look at these pictures. Okay, here's a picture.
Heidi, come on.
Here's a picture of his son. Do you think you look like him? You know, and so Heidi, I mean, she had the bit in her mouth and she was running with it. So she eventually, and again, it takes some explanation, but she eventually said, okay, I know by comparing records, Dr. Rice is your biological father.
Biological dad.
So we then made contact with, and I'll sum it all up. We then made contact with a grandson of his who was on Facebook. That was our connection, and he was like, "Oh, that's kind of an interesting premise." And he gave us his dad's contact information, which was
Dr.
Glenn
Rice's
oldest son.
Oh, okay.
Oldest son,
right.
Dr. Rice's grandson first,
Your
and his oldest
brother.
son. And we connected with Steve, and we eventually met the family and realized, yes, this is true.
You know, it's interesting that Heidi took the lead on it. There was a cop I worked with that was adopted, and we were discussing this once. I said, well, do you know who your biologicals are? He said, yeah. And his words, 2 horny college kids in Oregon who had a one-night stand. And I said, well, have you ever contacted? He said, no. He said, my parents were my parents. I never had any problem. Yeah. But he said his wife had nagged him to do it for health reasons. Mm-hmm. She wanted to know more because he was having some issues, and she said, hey, this is important to know. As a matter of fact, I've done adoption work. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I always try to stress with the parents who are placing the child for adoption, to do a full medical thing. Yeah. So the parents who are the adoptive parents know what the potential, health stuff for their
One of
adoptive kid
the
would be,
humorous outcomes of this was after finding all this out and finding out a little bit about Dr. Rice and talking with his sons, my brothers. So I grew up with one sister, and I now have 3 brothers.
Right.
And that's been a bit life-changing. Yeah. But I learned some more about Dr. Rice quite a bit. We read about him. He was a war hero, and he was a battalion surgeon that landed on Iwo Jima. And
really?
just
Okay.
some great history.
So he was a naval corpsman.
He was.
Okay,
Yeah. He was
right,
just. Some great history. There's too much. There's a book written that has a lot of features about him, about that whole period of time. But I went to my doctor and said, Dave, here's an interesting deal. All that history in my records about my dad's heart disease, you can strike it.
Because it doesn't apply, right?
Those are not my genes.
Your adoptive dad, you didn't have to worry
about. My nurturing dad, Tom, had pretty serious heart disease. Okay. And I said, you can take that out of my record because that's not there anymore. So,
one cool thing,
absolutely.
so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah.
Okay, so you've got now 3 brothers.
3 brothers.
Okay, all right, and Dr. Glenn Rice.
They would be half brothers, and I have met some of their sons, so those would be my half nephews. And we've just said, let's bag that. We're brothers.
Right, so how did they, when you show up and say, "Hi, guess who I am"? I mean, did they know their father had been engaged in this work?
Not
or
at all. In fact, Steve's first response was very honoring of his father, and Steve actually talked to, I think it was email first. I'm not sure if it was phone, but Steve talked to Heidi and said, "There's no way. My dad would never have done this. He was he used the word straight arrow. He stopped at every yellow light. He just wouldn't have done that." So, assuming that there's a little bit of almost impropriety there.
I don't think it would be allowed now.
Exactly.
Right. I think, it wasn't regulated back then.
It was totally regulated. And we have done, if you read this little thing, which I know we're going to talk about, there's a lot of information in here about the protocol at the time, which was one of the phrases that they used was set it and forget it.
Right.
Bury this thing.
Right.
And so Dr. Rice studied at Johns Hopkins under a doctor who was really one of the real pioneers in human reproductive type of things. And so they just said, he actually said, when you sign the birth certificate, you are signing a lie, but it's a productive lie.
And it's also legal.
And it's because there was no control. There was there was no identification. It's like do everything you can, and that's what Dr. Rice did. That's why this is a good story.
Yeah.
Dr. Rice said, I mean, this is totally projecting. Said, I can help this family.
Exactly. He probably said, I can assure that you and your sister were full siblings. Probably saved your parents quite a bit of money.
And again, we love to kind of think it out. What were the possibilities? He did it once, and Mom and Dad had Barb. And he may very well have gone, oh man, I'm not sure I should have done that, but okay, it's done.
Right.
Well, then they come back 4 years later.
Right.
And then, bless his heart, he said, really, to make these 2 kids full siblings, I need to do this procedure again. And he did. So, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so talking with Mr. Don Myers, phenomenal stuff. Very interesting. But hey, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. Don's going to tell you more about this story in a unique way. So you stick around. Street Talk and other stuff. We will be right back. So.
The Honda you want is here. Get a great offer on the stylish HR-V or the Civic. Which car and driver called fun to drive? There's never been a better time to drive in the moment with Honda. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or hurry into your local Honda dealer today.
Raising a family may have seemed overwhelming to your parents, but they weren't. Coach, teacher, life guide, caregiver. Family takes care of family. And as the circle of life continues, you now are their caregiver. It may seem overwhelming, but we're here to help you find the support services necessary so you can provide quality care to your elders.
Call Aging and Adult Care of Central Washington at 1-800-572-4459. Tiki Hawaiian Barbecue, family owned and operated on North Wenatchee Avenue, right next to Hooked on Toys. Tiki Hawaiian Barbecue uses only fresh ingredients handcrafted with love, including authentic Hawaiian barbecue and Japanese-style ramen noodle soups. And the bubble teas will keep you coming back for more. Enjoy the culinary tour of the Pacific Rim with Hawaiian barbecue lunches and combo plate classics, as well as ramen noodle soups. Tiki Hawaiian Barbecue. Enjoy their comfort food like you're one of the family.
I chose Pinnacles because they embrace and lift people with different learning styles.
It's a school where I can be myself, creative, and be successful.
There's a lot of hands-on activity, and
you get to really connect with the community here because we're all one. We get to see each other often. It's a small building.
The teachers care about you and make sure there is equity in the classroom.
They take care of them as a whole. They see them as a name, not a number.
Okay, we're back. Street talking other stuff. Oh gosh, some of the stuff we talk about off camera is just as good as what we're here. But hey, okay, so having all this information, what did you decide to do? Okay.
So one of the fun things about this story, again, we sort of did this on a lark. It wasn't like let's dredge into our future. Sure. It was just, you know, and this came up. As we began to put together the pieces of the story, one of the things that became clear was this was a good story. Yeah. This was Dr. Rice really honoring Tom and Helen Myers and really saying, I can help this young couple create a family, which is what they really want. Sure. And so it was a good story. And then you asked a question I didn't really answer. Steve and his wife Freddie, and then the other brothers, they were so wonderfully accepting. I mean, it was kind of surprising, but it was like, hey, you know, welcome to the family. Yeah. So I have been I've been to a wedding, I've been to memorial service, I've been to, you know, family things.
Well, it must be nice to have an ordained minister in the family.
They haven't taken advantage of that yet. But so they have welcomed us in. So the point is, it's a good story. And Barb especially, she gets all the credit here. She said, somebody needs to write this down. That was the key phrase. Okay. Somebody needs to write this down. Well, I'm not an author, and you know,
you are now.
She said,
"You are now."
I am.
You
okay,
know?
prior to this, but she said somebody needs to write this down, and knowing Barb, implicit of that was, and I'm not going to do it. But she gets a ton of the credit for sort of the incentive of that, and so in about 2019, I took some time and started writing, and we ended up with a book. There it is. There's the totally proclaiming book. So anyway, so I wrote a book.
The name of the book is Who Am I? A Journey of Discovery.
And
available on Amazon.
And
you know,
the interesting
both hard
thing,
copy or Kindle.
Exactly, both those things. If you want to find it, what I realized later, oops, should have done a little more research, there's a whole lot of books with the title Who Am I? This is not the only one. So look for Who Am I and my name, Don Myers.
Don Myers. Well, that's
so,
what I.
Yes.
When I looked up again to make sure I had the proper.
Yeah.
I just put in Don Myers on Amazon.
And
there you were.
And it's cheap. Okay, it's a great bargain. And part of the reason was, you know, we didn't, and I say we because Barb was definitely kind of a co-author. Her name's not on it, but she was the fact checker, and she would constantly say, you know, I know you wrote that, but that's not quite the way it was, because there's a lot in here about our early childhood. And my memory is really pretty fuzzy at a lot of things. She's 4 years older. She saw things differently. She remembered things differently. She was wonderful at not just editing in terms of copy, but you know, the real content. Let's get this right. So it became a little bit of therapy, a little bit of catharsis.
Well, sure, I would imagine.
But it's also good to have a good story down there. Yeah. One of the problems is that I mean, there's many memoirs and books written about DNA discoveries. There's a term that I quote in here that I really kind of like. It's called the term is NPE, and it stands for, generally accepted now, not parent expected.
Okay.
When you take a DNA test, you get back an NPE. It's like, oops, this is what I was thinking I was going to get. This is a great story. Yeah. There are many stories that are much darker and much bleaker because they.
Yeah, I would imagine.
There's immorality. There's deception. There's stuff that you just didn't.
And sometimes
want to come out.
You know, I mentioned my friend who was the cop I work with,
Yeah.
his sister did want to know. She was adopted as
Yeah.
well. Did
Yeah.
want to know who her biological parents were.
Yeah.
When she found out, she was very disappointed. You know, I know a lot of people have this grandiose idea that, you know, I'm actually, you know, Queen Katrina from the Tsar of Russia. You know,
Yeah.
but that's just not always the case.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And again, great kudos to all of the Rice Clan, you know, for open arms, for accepting us in.
Now, what I thought was interesting, how you looked at your nurturing father once you found out he was not your biological father. Tell us a little bit about that. It kind of changed perspective for you a little bit, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah.
There were always things that, I mean, even as a kid, I thought, I'm very different than Dad. I mean,
Really?
physically, I was different than him. And I would say kind of emotionally, I was different than him. And without going a lot into it, you know, you want to honor this man that poured his life into me
Well,
for so
yeah, I
many
mean,
years.
exactly,
But
exactly, you
Dad
know?
left me with a lot of baggage.
Okay.
Dad was very critical. Dad wasn't very affirming. I mean, very not affirming.
And that may not have had anything to do with whether you were his biological kid or not. It just, you know.
And it's the culture, it's the age.
Sure.
Dad grew up without a father. His dad abandoned him when he was 13, so he had baggage. You know, we used to, Barb and I used to say, Dad did the best he could.
Yeah.
And part of me believes that. Part of me says, people can get better and people can change. So yes, there was a lot of reflection and analysis, and the interesting thing is I'm not very good at that. I don't do a lot of analysis. I'm sort of a face value kind of a guy.
Yeah,
but it was good to do some thinking. Yeah.
You know, because that's kind of the same experience with my father. You know, I mean, his dad abandoned their family, died when my dad was 6. He was a drunk and a wife beater. So I know that my father thought, at least I'm here, I'm providing, which he always did.
Absolutely.
But there was, but I always think, I remember my sister once when she visited when he died, saw the relationship Maria and I had, and it literally brought tears to Jean's eyes. And she said, Dad missed that.
Yeah.
And he did. You know, I mean, my family, the 5 of us, are all very different, unique individuals, but we're well worth knowing.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, and I feel bad that my dad didn't fully be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I appreciate
I mean,
that.
the way, I mean, look at the father you are, and I like to say the father I am. I mean, we're tight with our kids and our grandkids.
Absolutely.
And that's just, my gosh, the fulfillment of life.
And part of that for me, I would say, was kind of knee-jerk. It's like I wanted to be a different father and now grandfather
That's exactly
than
the
my
same
dad
thing I
was.
thought,
So in that sense, there's a thank you. It's like I learned, you know, and we learned from that. One of the interesting things, and the reason I use this whole "Who Am I" thing title is one of the things that this book helped me do. Because it's a bit of a memoir, so it's not just this DNA story, it's a lot of my life story, was to look back at all the people that have invested in me. Not just my parents, not just, you know, biological family, but there have been, I mean, teachers and coaches and you know, so many folks that I realize I have become who I am because of people's investment in me. So then, the moral of that story is the great privilege we have in investing into others. And kids and grandkids, spouses would be first, but not the only. So,
okay, talking with Don Myers. The name of the book is Who Am I? A Journey of Discovery. Have I got that right?
There it is again.
Okay.
Yep.
Available on Amazon. I read it. I thought it was great. Very much enjoyed it. Very easy read. But it just, well,
it is.
I mean, come on.
It's not a masterpiece.
But it just, very uplifting story. I highly recommend it. But hey, we're going to come back, say goodbye to Don in a minute. But hey, we need to take a break. So Street Talk and other stuff. You stick around. We will be right back. So.
Global Car Care has the best customer service in the Valley. From the moment you walk in the door, their goal is to help you stay on the road, so you can keep doing what's important to you. Global Car Care certified ASE mechanics stand behind your automotive repairs.
It's the NCW Life Community Calendar, a presentation of Apple Valley Honda. The Wenatchee Valley Museum and Cultural Center has 2 events for kids coming up. On Saturday, March 30th, it's the annual Easter egg hunt on the lawn of the historic Wells House, starting at 11 a.m. for just $5 per child. And during the week of spring break, kids from kindergarten through 5th grade can participate in Robots and Engineers Camp at the museum. Each camp is grade and age specific. Details and registration at the museum's website.
Dim it. Oh, we're back.
Surprise.
But hey, I want to say thanks to Don for being here. Don, it's always great to see you, buddy.
My pleasure.
Okay, again, the
Paisan.
book, Who Am I by Don Myers. Find it on Amazon. But hey, Street Talk and other stuff. Next week is April Fool's Day, but I will be here. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
5-star defensive back in Georgia, and a lightning-fast wide receiver in Illinois. We'll also make stops in Arizona and Texas for some quarterback prospects. And former NFL offensive lineman Lomas Brown will share some memories in this week's Journey to Greatness. That's all coming up next on Sports Stars of Tomorrow. Welcome to Sports Stars of Tomorrow. I'm your host, Charles Davis. Georgia's been a great high school football state for a long time, but this year in particular, it's loaded with 5-star prospects.